thank you for conducting this hearing. To kick off this Congress, there is no more important subject than the security of our nation and of moving away from these horrific policies that have abandoned that security in the name of political correctness or in the name of some sort of social engineering or in the name of political expediency. I've been listening to this discussion today, and it strikes me that perhaps Washington does what so many Americans thinks Washington can do, which is talk ceaselessly about things that have little connection to their actual lives. Over the past 12 years, I led a state law enforcement agency in my home state of Kansas. I've been thinking on this dais about cases we actually worked. Thinking about a case in which a young man, I think he was 26, was running drugs for the cartels. He was driving north on a U.S. highway. He was stopped by an Oklahoma law enforcement officer. He panicked. He shot the officer in the head. By the grace of God, the officer is still alive to this day. He then came across the border where our officers stopped his vehicle with stop sticks. He fled on foot. He carjacked the vehicle of an old man in the middle of the night. He fled in a high-speed pursuit up the highway in Kansas. He realized he was going to be caught. He pulled over to the side of the highway. He invaded a home. By the grace of God, nobody was home. He then shot at our officers, and I had a lengthy discussion with my counterpart in Oklahoma over who got to prosecute him first. We both sent him to prison for the rest of his life under our respective state laws. I'm thinking about a case in Johnson County, Kansas, where an illegal alien in this country was drunk one night, and he struck and killed a sheriff's deputy who had done nothing but his job. He'd pulled over a citizen who was driving erratically on the side of the highway, and the drunken driver, who never should have been in this country, killed that young man. I attended his funeral. I'm thinking about a case in a very small county in north central Kansas where an illegal alien came to this country, raped a child, and we sent him to prison for the rest of his life under the laws of the state of Kansas, not because he was an illegal alien, but because he raped a child in our state. I'm thinking about a case in northwest Kansas where an illegal alien came in a very small county and murdered his domestic partner. We sent him to prison for the rest of his life. I'm thinking about a case in southwest Kansas where the same thing happened. An illegal alien joined up with some lawfully present citizens, stole a car, and then decided to kill the witness, and we wound up sending that individual to prison for the rest of his life. And that's just the cases I can think of sitting here that we handled at a state level in a state where the vast majority of criminal activity is handled by local authorities, not by the state of Kansas. Think of the volume that we're talking about here and how offensive it is to those victims and their families to say, statistically, illegal aliens don't kill people at a higher rate than anybody who actually lives here. Give me a break. So I have a couple of questions for you. I'd like to know, obviously we've talked a great deal about how enforcement priorities and policy priorities in this town affect cooperation and interactive. Out in the real world where federal law enforcement actually work with state law enforcement and they're not getting orders out of this town, they do their jobs in order to keep our communities safe and don't worry so much about who is doing what. They just want to get the job done. It certainly works that way in my state of Kansas. And yet we fight with folks in this town all the way from the operational level. I'm thinking of a briefing that was canceled where I was supposed to go get a briefing from ICE, and folks in this town ordered the local agents not to talk to us because I was a Republican. And we weren't supposed to get access to that information from line enforcement officers. All the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm thinking of a case we argued and actually won back in 2020 that allowed states to prosecute illegal aliens who commit crimes under the jurisdiction of our state. Were not preempted. So here's my questions for you, and I'll go to Mr. Fabricatore because he has operational law enforcement experience. As we figure out what we can actually agree on here that can make a difference, should we or should we not explore the idea of expanding cooperation between local and state law enforcement on the one hand and federal law enforcement on the other?
Yeah, Congressman Schmidt, absolutely. Look, working with federal law enforcement, local law enforcement, county level, all levels of law enforcement makes the United States safer. When we're able to join together and cooperate, we only make the communities safer.
And what about state and local prosecutors on the one hand, or federal prosecutors on the other hand? There are thousands of state and local prosecutors who encounter the vast majority of criminal aliens very few federal authorities. Should we work on expanding cooperation between federal and state prosecuting authorities?
Yes, absolutely. Any work that we can do together is going to make sure that we can make sure that we're going after criminals.
And so too with respect to state courts, where the vast majority of these crimes are prosecuted. Should we work on expanding the ability of state courts to assist us in enforcing our immigration laws?
Yes.
Thank you very much.